Okay, hello everyone. I'm John Stewart at the Miami Beach Urban Studios, and I'm delighted to be here with you all, working with our Zen and the Art of series with Deborah Briggs and the Betsy Hotel. And tonight we have Robert Zuckerman, who is live from a nursing home in Miami, who's going to be talking about Zen and the art of photography. And he's going to be in a conversation with Ray Elman, who you also see is here. So before we start, I think, Deborah, you'd like to say a couple words?
I would. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to welcome you on behalf of my family and the Betsy Hotel. And wanted to celebrate Robert tonight, Robert Zuckerman. His art has been hanging at the Betsy for about 8 or 10 years. It also hangs at FIU M-Bus. So John and I both believe deeply in what Robert's doing. And then we're so thrilled that Ray Elman is hosting tonight. Ray is the founding editor of the Provincetown Arts magazine and has his own magazine at FIU. So he's a great interviewer, and John and I thought tonight it would be great because Robert has so many great stories to share. It'd be great to have Ray join us. So thank you for coming. At the end of the event tonight, John and I will tell you a little bit about the series that'll start next Monday night, because we will continue the Zen series with a series with women's poetry, but we'll tell you more at the end. So thank you for coming again, and here we go.
And let me add one more thing before we turn it over to Ray. If you have a question, my role here is to kind of interject questions. If you have them, you can not chat with each other, but you can chat with me and send me your questions in the chat. The chat is down at the bottom of your screen next to the share screen button. So you're welcome to send me questions. I'll try to keep up with them and jump in and ask. Maybe you'll have a question about a photograph or a comment, and so feel free to start that. So thank you again. Ray?
Thank you, John. My name's Ray Elman. I've had a lifetime career as an artist, but along the way, almost like Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney starting to have a musical, I've started some magazines, and it seemed to get a little better at it over the years. In 1985, I co-founded Provincetown Arts magazine, which is now in its 35th year. And when we moved year-round to Miami, I fortuitously met up with Brian Schreiner, the dean of the College of Education, Architecture plus the Arts at FIU, and told him I was thinking about starting an arts publication in South Florida. And he said, that's exactly what I want to do, and we'll sponsor it. So we started off in 2015 covering all the arts, from architecture to music to dance and visual arts. And he made me and Robert Zuckerman, among others, Dean's Distinguished Fellows. And so I met Robert because we had offices right across the hall from one another. We became friends right away. And I started looking at his photographs and really loved the work that he was doing. So it's wonderful to have this opportunity to have a conversation with Robert about the work he's done his whole life. And we could kick it off, Robert, by just talking about, if you could tell us how you got involved with photography in the first place, and then what led you into the film industry.
Okay, well, I had somehow as a kid, as a shy, kind of inhibited, low self-esteem kid, I became fascinated with the camera, and I thought that I came to view the camera as a kind of a magic box that connected the inner and the outer worlds. But I never really got into photography until I was a junior in college. I had transferred to UC Berkeley from Boston University, and there my great lifelong friend Joel Levinson, who himself was an amazing photographer, urged me to check it out. And I had been on a course of pre-law and political science, and he basically said, here, you should check out photography. And one of the things he said to me is something very powerful that I've passed along to other people when I've had the opportunity. And he said to me, you can do it. And I found that I really loved photography, making imagery, and studying the masters. So anyway, that's how I got into it originally. at UC Berkeley. Then that was in the late 70s. Then I kind of kept photography as a hobby and was really pursuing a career in the film world, but I never really connected in a creative way. It was more tangential jobs, like at RCA Video Discs, and I had a job running a stock footage library in LA in the late 80s. And then I was a partner in my own production company, a small production company in Los Angeles that wasn't working out. So after a year, I left the company and became what am I going to do now? So I said, okay, I'm a photographer. And I just kind of declared myself a photographer. I made up some promo cards, and eventually I had a couple of jobs. My first job was shooting a jewelry ad for Giorgio Beverly Hills, and I did a couple of other jobs. And then a friend of mine who was a secretary to a big TV producer named Patrick Hasberg invited me or asked me if I wanted to do unit photography or set stills, production stills on a TV show they were producing. It was something called Sunset Beat, which was about these 4 cops who disguised or dressed as Harley Davidson riding bikers, but they were undercover cops. So that was my first job. The show never made it to the air, but they filmed a pilot and like 3 episodes, and then they pulled the plug. I think it was.
Oh, wait, I'm going to stop you there, but just because we have a surprise photo to show. So maybe, John, you could show the photographs that Robert was doing early on when he was still at UC Berkeley, and then we can jump to the show, to the production that he was talking about.
Ray, do you see them now?
Yes.
Okay, great. And there's something with your sound. Does somebody else have a phone on or something, Ray? When you're speaking, there's a little bit of a no, nothing. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
All right, cool. Take it away.
Go ahead, Ray. Sorry. Well,
so Robert, if you want to talk about these and then lead into the photo, the photo that you took on that first production work.
This image was made in 1977 when I was at UC Berkeley, and I had a work study job at a place called the Multimedia Center, where it did photography, and then in that day, 16 millimeter film services for different departments of the university. And there was a really nice Rolleiflex twin lens reflex camera that I was allowed to check out. And this image was in the back of my apartment building one morning. The clouds were just as they are, and there were these 2 shirts hanging on a clothesline. And I just love this image because it was something that was inspired. I was very into, there was a photographer named Jerry Uelsman, who was back in the 70s, did amazing things in the darkroom that, one would think would be Photoshopped today, very surreal or super real. And so this photograph is named Eternal Shirts. And over the years, for instance, in 1994, there was Project Angel Food, which was raising a benefit in Los Angeles, raising money for AIDS. And Mike Medavoy, then the chairman of TriStar Pictures, had them bring 20 or 30 photographs to his office of, big name photographers. And this was one of the pictures. And out of all of them, he chose this and bought it. And I think back then he paid something like $5,000 for it, which, in my career arc, that was a lot of money back then. I didn't get the money, but it was nice that it, raised money for a good cause.
So then if John, if you could move along with the images, and let's get to that one from the production company.
Yeah, this was also made in 1977, and it was when I had gone back, driven cross country from California to my home in Connecticut. And these were 3 chairs that were by the side of a tennis court on the street where I lived. And I used a flash on the camera to photograph them, and that exposure balance caused the sky to go a little darker than it was and the chairs to stand out. And I called this picture, which I titled back in 1977, it's called The Presence of Absence, because I felt that you could feel the spirit of the emptiness in the chairs.
And then, drum roll.
Now we go to the next one. So this was the first job I got on that TV show, Sunset Beat. And this long-haired actor, many of you could probably recognize him, hopefully, but it was George Clooney, played one of the cops. And here he is, sitting against a car. And I love doing portraits on set of just in available circumstances without having to set up lights or anything. And this was probably like a 3-minute setup of him just leaning against the car.
What just dawned on me, Robert, is that I've never seen any photos that you had to take at weddings or bar mitzvahs.
Oh, I'm not sure if there are any in here in our collection or not. But,
that was just a joke. I've only seen these wonderful photos.
But actually, in 1976, I went to photograph. I was hired to photograph a wedding, and I was just really at the very early stages of starting. And I only brought one camera with me, and the camera jammed. And that was when I really learned the lesson of always, whenever you go on a job, bring backup with you, backup everything. So anyway, but from this was like my beginning in doing photography on sets. And then we go to the next one, please, John. If we can, yeah. And this is a photograph that I was in late in the fall of 1990. I was assigned by Premiere Magazine to go on the set of this independent film that was being made called The Linguine Incident. And it was a low-budget film, but it had an amazing cast. And if you look in the foreground, there's Rosanna Arquette. Next to her is, behind her is Marlee Matlin and David Bowie. And behind them is Buck Henry and Andre Gregory are the names. And I used this set piece, which was a stairway with this kind of fluorescent or neon stair railing as the set, because I didn't want to take a lot of time with lights. I wanted to find something, and this worked out really well for this group shot. I photographed it with a Hasselblad camera and a 40mm lens, and I had it on a tripod, and we shot it at like a 1/4 of a second exposure because the light was so low, and that was it.
And can I just jump in? I was just going to jump in here and ask if anybody wants to have a question for Robert or Ray. Just send it to the chat, and it will come to me, and I will, or send it to me in the chat, and I will pass it along.
Okay. And then, so then you, as John pointed out to me, you probably, he said you probably couldn't have photographed David Bowie on the same day that you took the next photograph we're going to look at, right, because his hair looks so different. But I think you said it was the same day, right?
No, it was not the same day. What happened was the previous photo on the stairwell was for the assignment for Premiere Magazine was, I think, sometime maybe in November of 1990. And the production was going to go to New York for the final week of filming, but the budget was so low on the film that they couldn't afford to bring their still photographer with them. The still photographer was a great photographer named Gary Farr. And so I cut a deal with, I got on with the producers, and, I said, I'll go for no pay if you just fly me back to New York and get me a hotel room. And because I wanted to see my family back there. So this was in December on a very kind of blustery morning at Coney Island, New York. And David Bowie was just standing around. I refer to this portrait as David in between cigarettes, because he was just, he was just looking off, and I just happened to get this. And to me, it's one of my favorite portraits. And that's it. So that was it. But a quick thing is, afterwards, I was in, oh my God, here I am with David Bowie. So intimidating, but he couldn't have been more down to earth and more professional and really attentive and present. So, and sorry.
No, I was just I thought there was a pause. I have a couple of questions from your eager audience.
Okay.
One is a very important one, whether David Bowie's hair just stayed like that.
No, I just caught that. It was, it was blustery and windy, and I just happened to catch it like that. It didn't stay like that. That was just, caught at probably 200th of a second by the camera.
And the other one was somebody who asked whether you embraced digital photography, and if you did, was that an easy transition? And maybe that's something you'll get to later.
Yeah, I mean, that's soon, because this was 1990. I really embraced digital photography probably in the early 2000s, like around 2000. I think is when I really got into it, 2001. Anyway, a couple of months later, I was back in Los Angeles with my then girlfriend, and we were out eating at some fancy sushi restaurant in La Cienega, and David Bowie walked in with Iman, and he saw me across the room, and they both came over to my table, and we talked for a few minutes. I just thought that was really indicative of his character as a person. It was really great.
So if you can move on to the next one, John. So these aren't meant to go together as a triptych. They're actually three separate photos, but we put them together because they're all poets. And this is National Poetry Month. And I think all three of these hung, Robert and I had a joint exhibition at the Betsy for National Poetry Month, I think a couple of years ago. And I think all three of those were hanging in the at the Betsy. And I remember you had a great story about being with Leonard Cohen, and
right.
Can you tell that story?
Sure. Well, it was 1993, and I was assigned by Venice Magazine, which was a long-running arts and entertainment magazine in Los Angeles, to photograph Leonard Cohen. And I went with Andre Ridgway, who was the interviewer. I was to do the photography. Andre was to do the interview. And we went, and Leonard had an office in a house in Hancock Park of Los Angeles. And we went in, and he was very, very gracious. And he gave me about an hour to do the photography. And then we all went into his office, and he sat behind his desk, and Andre and I sat at the other side, and he put out 3 shot glasses and poured us some fine scotch. And he said, okay, now we're ready to do the interview. So that was the story of Leonard Cohen. And, it was just such a great honor, because I grew up with Leonard Cohen, and he helped me get through many dark nights as a teenager and, as a young man in my 20s.
Did you live across the street from him?
I had sorry. Go
ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say that while you were talking, somebody came on and said that you are, I hear reverb when I'm talking from somebody maybe on your side. But anyway, that you are a stills idol, and that you're a legend. And this guy, Brian Douglas, said he's so thankful for you, Robert. Just wanted to let you know.
Well, Brian is an incredible photographer, and he's, part of the current generation. He's done some amazing portraits on set of people. I appreciate it. We're friends on Facebook and part of different forums together, but Brian is a great photographer himself. So, man.
What were the circumstances that set up the Maya Angelou shoot? Okay,
well, that's an interesting thing. Goes back with my younger sister, Patty, half-sister, who had a undiagnosed genetic disease, and she eventually became quadriplegic. But she was a big fan of Oprah Winfrey's. And, when her disease started in late 1989 and it progressed through the 90s, I kept trying to get Patty in touch with Oprah, and it never happened. I would always get back these polite form letters. And then as my career grew in the film business, and I developed a good relationship with Will Smith and his company, Will's chief of staff, Jonathan Babatunde Bey, I asked her if she had any connections with Oprah and she could help me. So she connected me with Libby Moore, who at the time was Oprah Winfrey's chief of staff. And I had, this was like in 2006, she connected me, and I sent 3 copies of my book, hindsight to Libby, and I got back this very nice letter, handwritten note from Libby, thank you, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't hear anything for about 6 months. And then one Sunday afternoon in the fall of 2006, I was just hanging around and my phone rang, and it was Libby calling me from Chicago and telling me that she had been so busy that my book had been sitting on her coffee table for 6 months, and that she finally opened it and she'd been crying for the last 3 hours. And she invited me to bring my mom and my sister Patty to Chicago, which we did in 2007. And that was really nice. And then a couple of years later, Libby and I had stayed in touch. She arranged for me to have a meeting with Maya Angelou. So in June of 2009, I was in New York, and I went to Dr. Angelou's brownstone in Harlem and spent an afternoon in her apartment, and it was pretty amazing. So that was how that happened. It was set up through Libby Moore.
And you had some kind of, there was part of the story about her looking out the window at something across the street. I can't remember the details.
Well, when I got to her brownstone, she was sitting around her dining room table with some people and talking. And I went in her living room, and that big red sitting chair, which was facing the center, and I turned it around so she'd be lit by the light coming in from a window. And so when she came and sat in the chair, she had never looked out that window because the chair had always been turned inward. Now it was turned facing out. And she looked outside and she saw across the street a sign on another brownstone for sale. And she, in her deep voice, she said, "Oh, that brownstone building is for sale. Maybe I should buy it." And so that was that. But I spent probably about 3 hours at her place, and everything that I said to her, she kind of wrapped in wisdom and said back to me somehow. It was an amazing experience.
Great. You want to move forward, John?
Can I ask just a question about this that came in from the audience? Asking what is the difference, pro or con, about seeing your work virtually as you are now, or seeing it in a gallery or museum or even a book?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's a different context, but I still enjoy seeing it. And now it's another way for people to view the work. We'll get to that in a minute as we move forward chronologically. When I got into digital, it's something that for a long time I shunned because I was kind of old school film. But then when I, got into digital, I really embraced it because I loved how it kind of put everything at my control, the image and the, post-production and distribution of it. But this, in the sort of 1993 to 1996, I was doing photography for Capitol Records. And this was on assignment at a music video that Bonnie Raitt was doing. And this was all pre-digital. This was shot on Kodak transparency film. And it was a great shot that was actually ran in Time magazine as a full page, which is very rare for music photo. It ran full page, and it also ran in some guitar magazine. But it was just, it was a great honor to photograph Bonnie, another icon that I love.
Maybe we can click forward, John, and we have to talk about this one. I was going to click forward, but we can't give up this one.
Well, this goes into 2002. I was hired to be the still photographer on Terminator 3, on the production of Terminator 3 by Warner Brothers. And I got in through a friend of mine, Cheryl Main, who was the Arnold's publicist for many years. And so we were on the set. This was near the end of filming. It was like 100-day long production. And one day, and Arnold was in his sort of pre-governator stage, but, getting ready for that. And President Clinton visited the set one day. And of course, everything stopped and everyone wanted to get their picture with him. But this is a picture that I couldn't pass up. So I was there, and, I always remember that Arnold introduced me to President Clinton saying, "This is Robert Zuckerman, the best photographer I've ever worked with." So that's, sorry for that bad Arnold impersonation, but this is a great moment for me.
And then he told you to call your mother, right?
Oh yeah, this was another day when we were filming in the soundstage, not here, but one day we were on the soundstage downtown LA at LA Center Studios, and Arnold looked over at me and asked me, Robert, do you have your cell phone? I said, yes, Arnold. And he said, I want to talk to your mother. So I called my mom, who was in Miami, Florida, and we were in LA, and I said, Mom, someone wants to talk to you, and I put her on the phone with Arnold, and they spoke for maybe good 5 minutes. And in the end, Arnold said to my mom, your son is the best photographer I've ever worked with. And then he goes, but he doesn't get the credit. You do, because you produced him. And I always thought that was such a great shout out to parents who often don't get credit for the achievements of their children. So anyway, later on, years later, when my mom was in a nursing home in a decline, she used to like it when I told her that story. I would repeat it to her, and then and I said, and I would go to the last line, well, he doesn't get the credit, you do, because you produced him. And she'd go, yes, that's right. And so anyway, that's the history of that story.
Okay.
So can we go to the
Moving
next
on,
one?
John.
So that's my sister Patty, who, as I said, became quadriplegic. Probably her disease progressed to by 1999. This was in 2002. And in 1995, I had worked on a film called Unhook the Stars with David Thornton, who's one of the actors in it. And David Thornton is married to Cyndi Lauper. So it was great because Patty had always been a fan of Cindy's. And, I would get them on the phone every now and then to talk. But this was Cyndi when she was down here in Miami. She was at Cyndi was performing at Gulfstream, and I was able to get backstage and got this photograph with her and Patty. So it was a really nice moment.
It's beautiful. And then John?
Jeff Goldblum. Is that can we take the cursor off his face? Okay, good.
I'm sorry about that. I'm really sorry for doing that.
Okay.
We're all neophytes.
Yeah. Anyway, I had met Jeff Goldblum when I was working on Jon Favreau's. I was doing stills on Jon Favreau's program that he did called Dinner for Five, and Jeff was a guest of one of the dinners, and he was talking about filming at, liking the idea of what they call, I can't remember what they called it, but it was the idea of filming without long delays in rehearsals, of going, actors working in continuously. So I became friends with Jeff, and then one day in 2004, he asked me, he said, I need some photographs for my publicity, but I don't want to do traditional photographs looking into the camera. I want it to be like caught moments from a film. So I went to his house, and we just found spots of light where we made different portraits, and this is one of my favorites among those.
And then the next one, John. This will be a transition to Kindsight, the next one. And
okay. Yeah. So anyway, in 2005, I was hired to work on a film called Little Children, which was being directed by Todd Field, who was an actor that I'd known for a few years and was friends with. And Todd wanted me to be the photographer on his movie. And Todd was a disciple and had worked with, and it was a disciple of Stanley Kubrick. And he wasn't really big into having photographers on the set. He wanted to really focus on acting and filming. But he thought I would be the right person for the job. But I went in a week after filming started, and the actors were used to not having a photographer around. So in order to familiarize them with me, I gave copies of my book. I had copies of my book, Kindsight, put in the trailers of the three lead actors. And so we went on. About 2 or 3 weeks into the filming, one morning, Kate Winslet came up and gave me a really nice hug and said, I just opened your book and went through it, and I really love it. And I have to tell you the story of my father. And we became good friends after that. And a few years later, in 2008, I was invited over to her apartment in Chelsea area in New York. and I made some photos, just very impromptu, natural light photos without makeup or anything fancy, because that was how she was. She's, maybe one of the biggest stars in the world, but completely down to earth, a really wonderful, lovely person who's really mostly concerned about the well-being of her kids and her children.
Hey, Robert,
What's amazing, Robert, is I think she almost looks better in your photograph without makeup than I've seen her in any of the movies. This is such a beautiful, compelling photo.
I have a question. I have a question from somebody out there who wants to know how it relates to this. How you find the right light, and how do you know when you have the right light when you found it?
That's an interesting question, because when you do something enough times, you find out what works. I think it was William Blake who said something like, "The fool who persists in his folly eventually becomes wise." And so I just, practicing a lot and learning what looks good. And I found that kind of indirect, soft window light is a great light for portraits. You notice how the light's coming out over her face sideways. We call that raking light, where one side of her face is lit and the other side goes into shadow. And so I noticed if I was moving over toward the window and she was turning facing the window, her face would be more fully lit. But this is what happens. This is what happened. And a lot of the ways that I had this technique of finding what's good light by holding out my hand, my palm, and seeing how it faces like the window, or how the light falls on the skin. And I would do that around the movie set, and people would kind of think I was nuts, because I would be kind of walking around looking at the palm of my hand. But that's how that's one way that I tell if the light is good on the skin.
And we had somebody comment that that's also the way Vermeer liked his light.
Oh yeah. Well, I was inspired by Vermeer and Rembrandt and those guys, and I think that's another thing that I encourage young people who are, or not young, people of any age who are trying to learn about photography, to look at the old masters of painting, because they were masters of light. Vermeer, Hopper, there's so many painters that you can look at in addition to photographers. And I think that you pick it up by osmosis by studying it.
So should we move into hindsight?
Yeah. Did that just get better? I just was told by somebody that I was not in the right view. So can you still see the screen? Can you see?
Yes,
hindsight?
we can.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah, I can see it. It looks the same for me. But anyway, should we go into the next one?
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay.
Hang on. I just have to share again. All right, so
John, it strikes me that you have the most difficult job of all.
I have a very
making sure the
challenging
technology
job,
works.
But okay, let's go back. Let me just see that one.
Yes. So this was the.
Well, wait. Before you go into this, Robert, can you talk about what the inspiration was? I'm not sure if you started off thinking about it as hindsight per se, but what got you making the kinds of photos that became hindsight?
Okay, Ray. Well, that's a good question. And basically, it grew out of the aftermath of 9/11, when everything, the world was kind of enshrouded in the specter of terror. Everything was about terror. And I wanted to show that the richness of life still existed in everyday encounters. And that this was really, the richness of everyday life was kind of the antidote or antithesis to terror. So what I began doing shortly after 9/11, this was in early 2002, I began making photos of just random encounters and moments in life, and making a photo and a little paragraph beneath it, kind of prose paragraph describing the encounter and encapsulating it. And I began emailing these pieces around to friends and associates. It was, there was MySpace, but there was really not. It was a couple of years before Facebook, and but I began emailing these around, and I would get amazing response just because they were so personal. In fact, one time I emailed around some big movie poster that I had shot, and someone responded, "Well, that's a nice poster, but I like the stories better. And so I knew that I was really touching a chord with people. And so after I had accumulated, over 100 of these pieces, and I had been getting encouragement from people to make it into a book, I approached many publishers with it, but a lot of them were photography purists or saying, you can't have images with text and so forth. But finally, I showed it to a friend of mine, James Crump, and James had been the founder and publisher at a really high-end coffee table book company called Arena Editions, based in Santa Fe, which had folded, and then he kind of reemerged in New York. And I showed this to him, and it touched a chord with him. I showed him my dummy book, and he took it to the Frankfurt Book Fair, and it was very well received there. And so that led to a publishing deal. It was a small run, but I think there were 3,000 books sold, which sold out in a year. And I did a lot of book signings, a lot of radio and TV appearances, and it was even listed on the Pen American website. It was listed as for like three years running as the best book read this year list, not viewed, but the best book read. So I felt good about that.
Can I jump in? I've got a question. People are really responding very well to this. You have a good friend, Mr. Z, who wanted me to shout out to you. Hello. But somebody asked how you arrive at your terrific titles.
To be honest with you, I had a different title for this when I was first starting it in 2002. I had but I knew it was a working title. I had called it Transmission, because it's about the transmission of spirit. But then, like most ideas that I have, it's just walking around, or I was still walking at that point, but or just kind of going around. And I think that's the best way to get ideas, just kind of walking around and thinking. And it popped into my head one day as I was, I think it was when I was in New York City. It just popped into my head, hindsight, and I got lucky on that.
Robert, when we were talking this afternoon, I've been looking at this image for 5 years, and you said something about the image that hadn't even occurred to me because I'm dense, and it deepened my appreciation for what you've accomplished here. So could you talk about this particular construct and the different things that it symbolizes?
Yes, exactly. Well, this was on, this image was taken on September 11th, 9/11, but 2004. So it was the 3rd anniversary of 9/11. And there was a peace march that was going from, I think, Boston down to Washington, D.C. It was a long event, and a group of people were marching for peace. And they were in New York in this area. And God, I'm just blanking on it. What is the park that's on 14th Street on the east side around
Union Square?
Union Square Park.
Yeah.
Union Square. So
where they used to have a lot of union rallies. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But anyway, I was in Union Square. I was leaving the office of James Crump, where he was. He had an office right near Union Square, and I was walking through the park, and this peace procession was there, and these they were putting out these little glow sticks like candles along the path of their procession, and these 2 young boys were there and their parents, and I asked the parents if it was okay to photograph them, and they said yes. And so I said, okay, and it was getting dark out, so I said, hold the glow sticks up to your eyes. And so it illuminated their face enough to get this photograph. But then I also, realized that the glow sticks were kind of symbolic of the Twin Towers at the same time. But, then James Crump took this dummy book to the Frankfurt Book Fair along with this cover mock-up that we did. And it was very, very well received. And, the German people called it Kinsicht, which was, about these children with glow sticks. So that's basically the story behind it, Ray.
Should we move on, John?
And this is I'll be quick about this. Is the hindsight piece that I did in 2006. It's called Cloud Hypothesis. And it basically talks about, it's kind of one of my favorite pieces that I've written, and I'm not going to read it here because it's too small, but you can go on, we'll give you the address of the blog where this is located to read it more, thoroughly on full screen. But it basically is a piece that talks about that these clouds that if well, I can't see the end, but it basically talks about my grandchildren's grandchildren seeing this, that it might very well look something like this. And so this was one of my favorite pieces. If we could move on to the next one, we'll get through this here. And this is also one of my favorite pieces. And it's not, these two pieces are not about encounters with people, but more about moments. And I said, random encounters and moments. And this piece is called Luminous Commute. And what happened is when my parents divorced in 1956, and my dad moved to Miami and remarried, and I didn't see him again until I was about 16. And then we connected. And then in 1997, when I was 42, I moved my mom down here to Miami too, and she lived up in Sunny Isles Beach. So they lived about 10 miles apart. I had both parents living 10 miles apart. And this was me driving back and forth between their homes. And I called this piece Luminous Commute. And this is also a piece called Late Night Surveillance. And this is me in the apartment where my mom and my sister Patty lived. And Patty, as I said, was quadriplegic. And I was walking around the apartment around 2 o'clock one morning, and I walked into my mom's room, and she was sleeping with the TV on. And I was walking in, and I walked into Patty's room, and she was also sleeping with the two cats purring on her legs. And she had Janet Jackson, When I Think of You, on the, I had on like a boombox loop, so it kept playing. And I write at the end that, outside the balcony, as the winds howl, the Miami winds howl, there's a spaceship waiting for me to take me to distant nebulae. But I said, I have no desire to leave because I'm already at the center of the universe. And so that's this piece, Late Night Surveillance, in 2006.
That's beautiful, Robert. I was just going to say, while you were talking, a couple of people have said that you're always the best and you keep on inspiring us. And thank you so much for bringing joy to and illuminating our difficult days. So I just wanted to inject that because it seems so part of your Kindsight project.
Oh, well, it is. And that's another thing about photography. I learned early on in my career that one of the main ingredients of my photography, and I think of almost any vocation that people have, is to have good intention. And my intention with photography is both, when I did a lot of headshots in Hollywood, was to help people with their career. I think even though it's an invisible element, it's a very important element to have good intention, whatever you're doing. And so my intention with Kindsight was to transcend differences among people and to show that everyday life and that life is rich. So that's a good observation that person made. Let's go to the next one. This one was made in 2011 at my home in Los Angeles, my then apartment in Los Angeles, which was a second floor walk-up. And the title of the piece is called My Daily Everest. And I had been diagnosed. I was still able to walk, but with great difficulty. And I had been diagnosed with this genetic disease that I have called adult polyglucosan body disease, abbreviated APBD. And so I would come home from grocery shopping or whatever, and I'd have to get up these stairs. And I say in this piece that when I moved into this apartment in 1989, I was able to bound up the stairway like 3 at a time in a matter of seconds. But now getting up the stairs, or, at the time of this photograph, it took me maybe like 5 minutes to pull myself up the stairs one at a time, and especially when I had a basket full of groceries or something. So that's why I call this my Daily Everest.
Can I ask you one other question here, Ray, that somebody in the audience asked? They asked if you could mention who your heroes in the world of photography are.
Oh, me or Ray?
Yeah. You. No, I'm sorry. I was just...
Nobody cares about mine.
No, we do care about you a great deal, Ray, but this is really about Robert. So
No,
Yeah,
I
if you,
mean,
Robert, if you had heroes.
oh boy, there are so many. I mean, you know, going back to the 18th, the 19th century, Julia Margaret Cameron and some of the early photographers, Steichen, Edward Steiglitz, Robert Frank, you know, Ansel Adams, Irving Penn. Oh boy, and I'm just blanking out now. But there are many of them, and even today, gosh, I mean, I love Annie Leibovitz and what she's done with portraiture. So many Eugene Smith, Eugene Smith. I don't know. I'm on the spot here, so I'm blanking out. But there are many
Okay.
people who have influenced me.
I'm going to save you with another comment that says from somebody who said, you are a master of light and you convey a great deal of warmth and humanity at the same time. So it's just a...
Well, I thank that person.
And somebody else said Lisa Law. Does that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Shall I go on to the next one?
Yes.
Yes, please.
There we go.
So this is Robert's new series, and I think the whole concept of it is so brilliant, and the idea that you went from hindsight, which was triggered by 9/11, to this Planet Portrait series, which is triggered by our current pandemic, is just remarkable.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it's inspiration that came to me in the same way that other ideas come. It just, you know, I guess I'm prone to sometimes having good ideas and believing them. And this is something that I've been doing for the last only about 2, maybe 3 weeks now, where I've been connecting with people in different parts of the world. And it's a very quick process. It's not a long, drawn-out thing where I maybe make 4 or 5 frames of someone via handheld devices in different parts of the world. And in this collage here, we have, you know, several places in America represented: Los Angeles, New York, San Luis Obispo, and then Menlo Park is here, and also, you know, Brooklyn. And then we have in different parts of the world, we have Paris, we have Brazil, we have Rome, Italy, we have New Zealand, and so that's it. And then San Francisco as well is in there. So it's something that, as I said, these sessions take maybe, you know, 5 minutes to do, to contact the people and then make them. But I think it's an important thing to be doing now during this, particularly in this time that we're in, to be able to connect with people who are in quarantine in different parts of the world and do this. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with these photos, but right now I know it's an important mission to be on. So I'm continuing it.
Well, in connection with how some of the other people on the call, on the Zoom, have mentioned your skill with using light, the idea that you're on FaceTime with people all over the world and you're getting them to adjust themselves so whatever lighting they have available works for making a good photograph is just incredible.
Well, that's it too. I mean, it's, you know, again, I've had so much practice doing headshots in available light and getting portraits using available light. So I have the people, the subjects, you know, move to a certain spot where the light looks good. You know, we don't want, you know, really strong sunlight because that causes squinting and shadows, maybe more open shade by a window or something. And plus, these handheld devices that we have such a great deal of sensitivity, so that one doesn't even need to be in really open, bright light in order to get it. I mean, it's about, I say it's about quality and not quantity in this case. So I've even lit the person, like in the upper left, the woman, Vivian, who's leaning on her hand with her eyes closed. This was photographed by a bulb in her kitchen at night. So that's it's just something about making sure that the person is in good light, and then and making the photo.
Can I
so
just?
go ahead. Yes.
I was just going to jump in because a couple of people have commented on this. I want to read them. They're very beautiful. A person says, Robert, you have the keen ability to incorporate feelings and emotions into a picture. Thank you for sharing your brilliance with the world. You are a treasure. And somebody else says, Robert, in all the years I've known you, I've never seen you climb a single stair, but I've witnessed you help many others walk on dreams of thoughts. And somebody
Oh,
else
wow.
just says stunning. So really, congratulations.
Oh,
And
well,
somebody else has a question here. Have you embraced the iPhone camera?
I'm sorry, have I what?
Have you embraced the iPhone camera?
Well, actually, now I have, and it's I kind of it's kind of like when I got into digital, I kind of did the made the cross and held it up like you did to Vampire. I said that wasn't for me, but once I got into it, I embraced it, and now for this project, the iPhone camera is really working for me. So it's I think we have to use the tools that are available and are appropriate to each application. In this case, the iPhone application is what works for this, and then I can port the images over into Photoshop and to work on them and to enhance them. And they even have programs and software where one can take a smaller picture or a low-res picture and up-res it into a larger picture. So they've had that for quite a while. There's a program called Genuine Fractals, was like the original one, but there are other softwares as well where one can enhance and enlarge and up-res a photo.
Lee has a question, which is, Robert, do you have a preference between black and white and color, or do you have, what are your feelings about expressing yourself in both dimensions?
Well, I like it. I mean, what I say is that I try to let the photo or the image tell me what it wants to be, and that's kind of, I guess, here we are in the Zen of photography, but that's the Zen. For me, I kind of let the image tell me what it wants to be better. And again, with Photoshop now, or with, digital photography, you can look at it both ways and do things to it. It's, to me, it's a good tool, but I let the image tell me what it wants to be. Because as you can see here, there's kind of a mixture of both.
Right. And they all work.
Well, I think we're going to, Robert, this has been really amazing, an amazing journey through your photographs, which every day, stun me into kind of seeing new light in humanity. And I think what we said we were going to do is to kind of bring this to a culmination. There are more than 80 people on the call, or households on the call. We'd like to unmute everybody to give Robert a big round of applause. So I'm going to do that right now, and then we'll end the session. So,
John,
I just wanted to thank you.
Well, yeah, I'm. Before we do that, I also want to thank everybody who's on this call. I want to thank you and Brian Schreiner and President Rosenberg and Ray and of course the whole Betsy Hotel family, Deborah, Jonathan, Jessica, Zach, Leslie, and everyone at the Betsy Hotel. It's been great. And also I want to give thanks to my business partner. I have a business partner now for going on a year, Amy Ambrosino, out in Santa Barbara, and also Valeria Gerritsen, Dr. Ava Ritvo. I could go on and on and on and on. And of course, as I said, my original mentor, Joel Levinson, who I don't know if he's even on this call, but he was the guy that basically said to me, "You can do it," and that's what I said to everyone here.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Ray, did you have any last thoughts? Deborah? No? Okay, we're going to let Deborah, you're muted. If you'd like to say something, you're just muted. Do you want to unmute? Hang on. All right, there, you're unmuted, Deborah.
After we applaud, I'd like to tell everyone about next Monday night.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Unmuting everyone. Yay.
Bravo, bravo.
Bravo.
Say how honored we have.
Thank you.
Go, boo.
Oh my God.
Good job, Mr. Z.
Thank you, Mr. Z.
Wanted to let you know, man. Lots of love.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I love you all.
So is this everybody clicking off?
Well, maybe they're turning off. So
Are there any?
I'm waiting to hear what she has to say for
We're
next
just,
Monday.
yeah, we'll mute everybody and then, yeah.
Florida. Thank you, Betsy.
They should be unmuted. Yeah, hi. So I'm going to unmute Deborah. Where is she? Deborah. Okay, and then she can tell us a little bit about.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Deborah. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Robert. Thanks so much. I want to remind everybody to be in touch with Robert. Not that you need a reminder, but he is doing these portraits. Would love to hear from you. And also currently healing at a nursing home in Miami. And so, yeah, I know would love to follow up with everyone on the call. Just about to, next Monday night. So in a little bit, just to close this series, this was our first salon series. We had over 500 households sign up for this series. Over 100 were on tonight, and pretty much over 100 for each of the ones we had. We had more of an eclectic series for the first one. The next one is on the art, Zen and the Art of Women's Poetry, or Poetry by Women. John and I are collaborating with yet another partner called Supporting Women Writers in Miami. And so this will start next Monday night and run for 4 consecutive Monday nights, hosted by 3 major voices in women's poetry in Miami: Jen Karetnik, Catherine Esposito Prescott, and Caridad Moro Grondier. Our readers next week, Naoko Fujimoto and Frieza McKee. And then every Monday subsequently for 3 more, we'll have 2 poets read every time. And then we're currently planning the 3rd series now as well. And we have our fingers crossed that after 3 series and 12 weeks, the world's going to be so much closer to being back to normal. So we welcome you all to continue to join us, be in touch in between salons, give us ideas, and we wish you all well. Please stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amen.
Good night, everyone.
Amen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.